Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. All right, well, there's a couple of things going on at The Sober Nutritionist, which is the home to the Sober Edge podcast. If you are not on my mailing list, I invite you to sign up for my weekly newsletter because you're going to hear about some special things, such as my offer for my brand new book study series. I've done one before, so I guess it's not brand new, but I've got a second one coming out. We're starting next week. It's a small group, so there's just a few spots available. We're going to be talking about habits from the book Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin. I love to dig into a book and really get the most out of it. And in this fun and engaging workshop style, we get to do exactly that. So sign up for the newsletter, or I'll link the sales page in this show notes so that you have all the information. And I also, in the newsletter this week, chat a little bit about my favorite takeaways from the Sober Summit Holiday Edition. I just was so impressed with the quality of speakers and the content. So I break down a few of my favorite takeaways and give you an opportunity to buy one more time the full access pass so that you won't miss out on these 24 delightful speakers. So on today's podcast, I catch up with my friend and fellow coach, Megan Webb from Glass Fulfilled Coaching. And I love chatting about her podcast, her Festival of 50, as she too has joined us as a midlife woman. And so I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Well, hey, everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. And one of my favorite things to do on this podcast is to welcome some of my friends who are also in this coaching world. And so today I am delighted, and you are in for a treat, because we're going to have a conversation with Megan Webb from Glass Fulfilled. And you're going to very quickly realize that Megan comes from the land down under. So welcome to the podcast, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me, Terry.
Yeah, it's so delightful to talk to someone who is, just starting to kind of build her business, and you have a new podcast and you have a partner that you do your podcast with. And so let's kind of talk about what you offer in this alcohol-free world. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and your business, if you will.
Yeah, sure. So I did the coaching with This Naked Mind, and through that I met many amazing people, including you. And I also met my co-host of the podcast, Bella. So we finished our training, and both of us, I think she suggested, do you want to do a podcast? I'm like, yes, that is just something I really want to do. So we threw ourselves into it head first, didn't really think about it before diving in. And we're just loving it. I'm loving it. We're about 50 episodes, and the first few are just the two of us talking, and then we start to introduce guests, and we talk about all things alcohol-free, women, so things like sleep, socializing sober, and then I've interviewed many authors of Quit Lit, and then I've got some guests who have just been on the same journey as us, who've given up alcohol. So there's quite a wide variety of guests. I recently interviewed someone on menopause, getting more into, women around my age and what we're going through. So yeah, really interesting topics. And then in my business, Glass Fulfilled, I'm coaching one-on-one, which has been amazing. And I would like to get into some group coaching as well. So it's a work in progress. It's extremely enjoyable, and I'm loving it all.
Oh, that's so good. And I love that you are in the podcasting world and just furthering the conversation around what comes up as we navigate life. And then we throw in this, gosh, maybe I want to try alcohol freedom, and where do I begin and what comes up? And it's really so good to have so many resources. Do you find that there are very many sober podcasters in Australia?
You know what? It's definitely growing. And I think when you're aware of it, it feels like it's saturating everything. And it's like,
Yeah.
hold on, there's not meant to be this many. But I think that's just because that's the world I'm in. So it is definitely on the rise. I've actually been to a couple of sober events recently, and people recognized me from the podcast, which was very exciting. So it's nice to be getting out there. I think probably there's probably 5 or 6 that most people on this journey know of.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I feel like they're all a bit different though. So we're not all the same, which is obviously, we want to be that bit different. And I actually have a friend who rings me after every podcast, and she goes, "Oh, I just love your podcast." She goes, "I still drink, but I love it." So I know. I'm like, well, she doesn't need to stop, but I love that she still gets something out of it. That's really exciting for us, that it appeals to, all sorts of people. And that's just shows, the guests and the content, is not limited to just the sober world. But.
Well done. I love that. And you bring up a good point that, we don't stop living when we go on this alcohol-free journey. And one of the things that is so interesting is to help our clients understand how we bring in this new identity and we shift our behavior, and we still are us. And so I was writing an article, it's going to come out with my podcast and my newsletter this week, about not fitting in. And so, we think about, well, who am I going to be, and where do I fit in, and will I still belong, and will people still want to socialize with me? And, it's just amazing on the other side that you and I are. We recognize like, well, life will change, but it changes for the better. But when we're in the beginning stages, it can feel like, I guess I want to say almost inaccessible. Like, how do I get from where I am to understanding that life is going to be, it's still going to be good and rich and fulfilling? And so I love the name of your coaching, because being fulfilled. So what does that mean to you? What does glass fulfilled mean to you, Megan?
Well, I guess when I started on this journey, and as most people listening will know, it's a long, it's an up and down journey. It's not just one day you decide and that everything's perfect. And so I really looked into it a few years ago, and about what I wanted out of life and what was missing. And it came down to fulfillment. I wanted, like you just said, I wanted to be fulfilled without drinking, but I didn't know if that was possible. But that's what I want out of life, fulfillment. So that's where the name came about. And then I sort of played around with glass half fulfilled. And then I thought, oh no, that sounds like it's only half. Yeah. It ended up narrowing it down to glass fulfilled, a bit of a pun on the drinking with the glass. But to me, we do talk about a list of why we want to stop and what we want to get out of life. And fulfillment, I think, is number one for me. So that's where that came about, and that's kind of my journey towards, and it's an everyday process. You don't just achieve fulfillment, but I wanted to find a way to have a fulfillment in my life by, again, like you said, still being me, but being different me, because I was taking away such a big part of my life, but such a damaging part that really, really was preventing me from feeling fulfilled, preventing me from reaching my passion, my purpose, my goals. So that's where that's all come from.
And you just recently celebrated a big milestone birthday, and I saw some beautiful pictures that you shared online, and I could just see how much joy and spark you had in those celebrations. And I can only imagine what it would have been like if you had still been drinking and arrived at, is it okay to say 50?
Mhm.
You're a lot younger than me, so I'm poking fun at you because 50 sounds like a baby. I was still
Uh,
drinking when I was 50, but what a gift you've given to yourself. I often tell people, when they say, "Oh my gosh, I just had my first ever alcohol-free birthday since I was 14 or something." And I say, "Gosh, this is the best gift you could ever give yourself."
yeah, absolutely. And I have had people comment on my festival of 50, I call it,
Ah,
about, gosh, you're having so much fun. Gosh, you're doing a lot. But what it came from, I actually split up with my husband a few years ago, and he's turning 50 next year. I'm 50 this year. And a lot of people I've heard him say, and that they're going on an overseas trip, and that's fantastic without kids. And I thought, no, part of this giving up drinking for me has been to be better, more present for my kids. So I wanted to include my kids in it. I also wanted to have it as an excuse to contact lots of different people in my life and say, let's get together. So some of it accidentally turned into events. I had a 50th karaoke night with my work friends. So it actually turned out to be one of the best nights ever. There were about 26 of us, and I did sober karaoke. I am a karaoke fan from years ago, and it was really exciting to be able to do it sober. And that's because of the journey I've been on. I've had to work hard at not being too anxious. But it was so much fun. And I can honestly say that reflecting over the last couple of weeks, I went away with my family. I had some lovely friends have a picnic for me, had the karaoke night. I can honestly say that I feel so happy about where my life's gone, and knowing that I've got all these beautiful people in my life. And really, I've lost so few people on this journey. And when I say lost, I don't mean that in a bad way. There were some drinking groups I had. A lot of them, we've just changed it to brunch, walks, healthy things. So I haven't lost, because people often say, oh, I'm scared I'll lose friends.
mm-hmm.
I can count on one hand the friends I don't see, and that's because we were not in a good place. It wasn't an authentic relationship if we were just going out drinking. So it's really shown me how many people I have in my life and how lucky I am. And so I think I've just been really happy over the whole period, and it shows in those pictures. And that just, it's really, really nice for me to be able to tell other people life is good on the other side. It's better than good. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's such a hopeful place because it can feel daunting when we're on the other side and trying to imagine something that we can't really imagine. We just have to live it. And I always tell people, I promise you, there's so much good available. And, with the right mindset and with an attitude of curiosity and exploration and honoring our true self, we can grow in so many beautiful ways. And I love that. A festival of, did you say festival of 50? Is that what you called it?
Festival of 50.
So good. I just recently also celebrated a birthday, and I said, I'm one of those people likes to celebrate for about a month, like why limit yourself? And I was at
totally.
I was at a sober weekend event where I actually was one of the speakers, but just a few days before my birthday. And it was just, I saw old friends and new friends and got to spend time in a new city. And we laughed and laughed and laughed. And it was so much fun. And it just was, part of my birthday, because why not?
Yes.
It just, we can celebrate in ways that are different, but are so meaningful. And what you mentioned there around these authentic friendships is really important. I know for me, I was thinking about this idea of fitting in and belonging. And I thought, I wasn't really afraid of that because I was 55 and I was in a long-term marriage. So I felt pretty stable there. And then I also had friends that I thought, I think I probably drink more than anyone. They're not going to mind if I drink a little less, right? They're not going to like leave me out. And I still went to events and things. And, I'm happy to go places where people are drinking because I don't have there's no emotional charge for me anymore around drinking. And so I think sometimes we build up this idea and it can become a real barrier. And we just have to, ask ourselves, is that really true? Do I know that it's really going to be that way? My life's going to be that way. And I love that you are living proof that it's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, important for me to say that every day is not filled with, social and friends and everything. I made an effort to make most of the birthday things happen, not all of them. And I've had to make an effort, as a lot of people will understand, to find my communities after giving up drinking. But, there are times when I'm at home by myself, but the difference is I don't feel lonely. I feel a peace now. That has taken a process, but I enjoy my alone time too. And I think that's important so as not to, there was a time I could have got into a bit of a pity party, I think. Mm-hmm. But the work we've done, and there is work involved, but it's on ourselves. I find it fun and fulfilling. With all that work, I'm now at a place where I can take my own time. I can be alone. And then I can meet up with friends when I do. So, yeah, I'm not always surrounded by friends and things. I do have time by myself. I enjoy it. It's different now. It's a place of, it's not loneliness, it's peace when I'm by myself. I know how to enjoy my own company. There's ups and downs, of course, and it's been a process to get to this point. But so I just don't want people to think you stop drinking and everything's perfect. There's definitely the work that needs to be done, but reaching out is important. There are people around, there are people you can connect with. And I have got new groups of friends based on this new lifestyle. And that's really exciting too. But there's always someone you can reach out to. And I think that's the great thing about online. Mm-hmm. If you were at home feeling a bit low or whatever, jump on and there's a chat somewhere. There's people all around the world. So someone's always awake.
Yeah. It's so good. And I think sometimes we think we're going to be lonely, but some of that frantic activity of connecting with people was because we were searching for something. And when we're no longer searching and we do have that inner peace or more of that inner peace, then there becomes a rhythm to when we hang out with people and when we want to be with people. And it's not necessarily a pull that we have to have. I have a new client I'm just going to start working with. And one of his concerns is, I'm always the guy that's out there doing all the stuff and socializing. And what I found, and I bet you have found this too with your clients, Megan, is that sometimes we stop drinking, we realize that's not even who I really am. I was using alcohol to show up in that way, but it isn't really how I enjoy myself. I don't want to do that all the time. I don't want to have that frantic need to surround myself by groups of people and always be on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I totally understand that. And like at the karaoke, I definitely came out of my shell and I really enjoyed it. But the next day I was exhausted.
Yeah.
So there's a real exhaustion to this being on, and socializing that I never felt before. I was always hungover, so I was exhausted, all right, but just felt like crap. But it was interesting to kind of have that next day just going, wow, I am so tired. But it was so much fun. And just being able to choose when that happens. And that's why I really love lunches and breakfast, I like my early nights now. And I was like your client. I was the life of the party, but thinking back, oh, what a disaster of a life of a party. It'd start out great and then I'd be falling over and just, I cringe. I cringe at the thought because it wasn't me. It was, I was trying to numb out while still trying to party, and, it just all gets messy. And it is sad to reflect in that. I think, why was I hiding my true self? We learn why and things like that. But yeah, it's just nice to not have to be like that now.
Yeah. And you also, part of your story that I know you're open about is, kind of this anxiety journey and having some social phobias. And I think about you like doing a podcast and doing sober karaoke, like all those social phobias. What happened to those, Megan?
Yeah, totally. Well, when I was 17, is when I discovered I had a social phobia, and I shook in front of people. So from then I couldn't eat, drink in front of people. I couldn't speak publicly in front of people. It got to a point, sometimes my mouth would shake. So it was really, really hard to deal with that for quite a long time. And I still get moments when that can happen. Even a couple of days ago, there was a situation and I thought, in my head, I'm going to shake. And then now I deal with it differently. I might say something, owning it can be really freeing, but I also find the thought can go and I'm okay. But a lot of it has come down, obviously, to not drinking. Alcohol absolutely exacerbates anxiety. There's, no question. So I made what was the social phobia far worse. Yes, I could numb out by having a drink and go to the party or the wedding and not shake. That was great until I drank too much, and then things went, I don't remember the nights, and then I'd wake up feeling worse than ever and I'd be shaky, more so. And since giving up alcohol, a lot of the symptoms of the anxiety disappeared. But I've also, a big thing is practice. So in COVID, I put down my ability to be able to do podcasts and, speaking now. I put it down to a lot of practice in COVID. We had to Zoom in my company and I made myself speak on Zoom. So even something like that would have been a trigger for my social phobia in the past, but I made myself do it. And it's like cognitive behavior therapy, baby steps. I've had to practice to be able to do it. And I can't say that if I had to get up in front of a big audience, I'd be fine. But I do know I've had some anxiety doctors on my podcast, and I do know that one of them gets up and says, you might notice me breathing fast. That's my anxiety. And I think if I do something like speaking to a large group, I will just be honest about it. Chances are I'll be speaking about my anxiety anyway, but owning it really can make the difference. So it's not fully gone, but I've learned tools to deal with it better.
Yeah. That's really brave of you to share that. Thank you. And as you were talking, I'm reminded that I've had that experience before also. And I'm trying to think of when it was, of being excited about speaking and not really feeling nervous. I mean, nervous, yes, but not dreading it or anything, but then still shaking. And actually my voice shaking, my hands shaking. And I'm trying to think if it was all before I stopped drinking, because it's been 8 years for me now next month. And so sometimes think the timeline, and then you throw COVID in there and I can't remember. It's like, was that drinking, not drinking? Was it COVID? Was it? So I do know in the last couple of smaller groups, of maybe 10, 20 people, it's been very easy to be comfortable speaking. And certainly podcasting is, a great practice ground, because we are speaking to a big audience potentially, but we're really just you and I. It's kind of like the two of us here. And so it's such a beautiful opportunity to use our voice, even when we have felt in the past that maybe it's been hard to speak and to share and to be bold enough. So yeah, thank you again for sharing that. I think it's really powerful for those that struggle with those types of social anxieties, or as you called it, a social phobia, that drinking does absolutely exacerbate that. And then also what I love about your story, Megan, is giving ourselves on the other side of not drinking. We, when we're not drinking, on the other side of drinking, we really kind of give ourselves permission. And like you said, being able to own some of these human parts of ourselves rather than resist or push them away or try to create a story or hide. We can be much more comfortable in our own skin and therefore share, exactly like you said, tell people, yeah, here I am with all my anxiety. You might notice XYZ. And it's such a powerful human defining moment of allowing people to come into our world and to make us all level the playing field, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the podcast has helped me be more open. I know when we first started, Isabella and I were like, before our first one, we're like, oh, we shouldn't say that. Or I don't want to say this. I don't want people to know this about me. And it honestly took like one podcast and we're like telling everyone everything. And we've had such great feedback about that helping so many people. So I'm so glad I can be open and, help people on that journey. I've had people reach out to me who have this horrible shaking social issue and they're like, I thought I was the only one. And even that is just freeing to know you're not. Most people in my life never knew, and they say, but you're so confident. And I said, well, you get very good at hiding things, and it takes up physically and emotionally a lot of energy to hide it so no one knows. And that's when alcohol, I discovered, could help me hide it. Help me, I say, loosely, because in the end it didn't. It made things a lot worse. But yeah, it was hard to hide. So people are constantly shocked that I had that issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. We talked before I hit record on the podcast that, we are in this place of understanding all of the reasons that we drink. And for you can go back and pinpoint, this social anxiety was part of your drinking. But you and I were talking about that, the idea that women, as we get older and we are in this, 50s and 60s, as you are now part of this group, welcome to the side. We actually I find the women in my audience who are drinking in their 50s and 60s, it's really powerful to explore that these reasons we're drinking look different. And you and I talked about a few, menopause, empty nest, we'll call it gray divorce, where sometimes women and men are in their 50s and 60s. And just because they've been married 30 years, they are not saying we have to stay together. So sometimes these long-term marriages are ending, which is a big transition. And I think it's really important and freeing to explore that these transitions are part of the human life, and for women, there's a lot of them. Becoming a caregiver, maybe to elderly parents. We get in that sandwich generation where we still maybe have teenagers at home, and there's a lot of external things, and they can create us using alcohol more and more and more. And yeah, I think it's fascinating to call that out and to allow women to think about what's really happening. Yeah, so I think it's important and helpful when we help women identify some of these reasons that we might be using alcohol, because once we identify them, then we actually can help them and help ourselves create a plan. So what do you notice in your own life that maybe what were some of the other reasons, or in your client's life? Like what comes up, do you think, for women at this age when it comes to alcohol?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, just going back to my original reason for drinking was the anxiety in that, and it changes as we get old. So there was a time also when my kids were young that I would numb out because, parenting. And then moving to the next stage, I did break up with my husband, and I know that I just buried myself, my head in the sand. We both focused on different things. I drank, he gamed. It was an escape rather than facing excuse me, rather than facing the issues. And I think that's very common at this stage of life. We also had kids. I did most of the parenting. I had 10-year gap with my kids. So, I've had a toddler and a teenager. Now I've got teenager. And like you said, the aging parents, I think a big reason for drinking can be parents getting sick, losing parents. Now, menopause, I had a doctor on recently who just opened my eyes up to so many things around menopause. And a lot of people, women, are drinking because of symptoms that they don't realize are associated with menopause, which, it was very interesting to me. Of course, we don't want to put everything down to menopause. You've got to get checked for different symptoms. But when I stopped drinking, I suddenly had a severe leg pain, like a restless leg, really intense pain. And I did not know what was wrong with me. I had covered that up by drinking for however many years before. And then stopping drinking, I'm like, I couldn't even walk for 10 minutes without having to, And this is from someone who 10 years ago, I walked 55 kilometers in a day. With tests and research, I've narrowed it down to a menopause symptom because I've cleared everything else. Now, that's not something anyone would think of. I also had, when I stopped drinking, I hate saying this, it's embarrassing, but I had really sore gums and I had to go back to the dentist. I'd neglected that. So these are things that I think I was drinking to cover these health issues. Yeah. And I think a lot of women do that, and we can get a bit scared at this age of what they are. And so I don't think it's uncommon to drink to numb that worry. So, you've got all those issues, and amongst other things, your kids might be leaving home. If you have broken up with someone, you might be lonely. There's so many reasons for this part of our life that we might drink or start drinking more.
Yeah. And it's as a nutritionist, sometimes I will work with clients around their health concerns. And it's really powerful to exactly what you said there, Megan, is to make sure that if we're having something pop up when we're not drinking, please get it checked out, because we can be masking symptoms through alcohol use that might have shown us there was something coming up. And we also, we can start to want to work on our health. And so getting some initial labs and paying attention to where we are is a great place to start. I know for me, when I stopped drinking is when I went to nutrition school, and I was pretty excited about, leveling up my health finally and understanding what was really going on and where I could, thrive now that I had gained so many years back. When we're drinking, it's amazing. When I talked to a group of coaches recently, Megan, and I asked these women, if you stop drinking in your 50s and 60s, I have some questions for you. And one of the questions I asked them was, kind of what are some of the things that you believed would happen? And the number one thing that women in this age group, at least in this small sector, said was they were afraid it was too late to stop.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah. And I've actually heard clients say, I'm 71. Why bother stopping now? And it's like, oh my goodness. But imagine if you could, live the rest of your days empowered and authentic and free, and with that inner peace, like you're talking about, like it's so worth it, no matter how old we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just remember how once I sort of dealt with my issues, I looked back and thought, how the heck did I get 3 days hungover? No matter your age, not drinking means that take away the hangover, so it's that bit easier anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I did it, to be honest.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty crazy.
yeah, it is. But yeah, there's no age limit. I think there's always, the rest of our life. No one knows what that'll be. So
Exactly. And I just had this article, or this little series that I was introduced to, and the author, the presenter, Chip Connolly, he talked about the U curve of happiness. And, what we find is after midlife, and midlife is really defined as 45 to 50, that's kind of when we go through midlife, which was interesting. And they actually have an age of the time when people are the most unhappy. If you look statistically, and it's 47 years old and 2 months, 47 years and 2 months.
wow.
And so what's really cool about that is on the other side of that, the U curve is we do a dip, but then we start for every decade we live past that, we get happier and happier, which is so cool. And, if drinking is dulling that joy and that happiness, let's take alcohol out of the way and really experience what it means to be living in the freedom of someone who is, thriving no matter what their age is. And, the wisdom that we have, some of the letting go of other people's expectations of us. There's so many beautiful things to celebrate in this age of in our 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond. And I think it's, we sometimes think it's going to be all dull and gloomy. And the reality is, certainly for me, it's nothing like that.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me think of my mother-in-law, and she's not a big drinker anyway. She does not drink much, but she had her 70th last year, and she's lost weight during COVID. She said, I had to walk to socialize, and she's now buying houses and doing them up, traveling the world because her kids are grown up and she's a grandmother. Well, she can go traveling. She doesn't have to be responsible. She can just enjoy the grandkids when it suits her. But she's an example of someone in their 70s really making the most of life. So definitely no age limit there. She's quite inspirational, really.
Oh yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's me. I hope to be an inspiration. I just turned 63, and I like to do, and I'll offer this to you too, Megan. My daughter a few years ago offered this birthday ritual that her friends do. And one of the things was to come up with sort of a theme around your birthday. And the easiest way to do it is to have a rhyme. And so for me, my theme for this year is 63, happy to be me. And I just feel like it's such a beautiful place to land, knowing that I want to create more of this authentic living and this being comfortable in my own skin. That's a beautiful part of being happy to be me, right? And you can do it around 50 too. You just have to come up with something that rhymes. So this theme of 63, happy to be me, is so much fun because I think my listeners know that living with intention is so powerful. It's just one of my favorite, things to focus on and to cultivate in my life. And so this idea of being comfortable in my own skin and having this joy around being this age feels really aligned with where I am right now. So I invite you to think about what you want to have for your 50th, right?
Yes. I am going to think about that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I need to think about it. I keep thinking nifty, thrifty.
Yes. Well, you can also focus on the fifth E. So whatever rhymes with E, like my 63. And so anyway, it allowed me to start looking at every year as this grand adventure.
Yeah.
And certainly that has happened since I have become alcohol free. So I think it's so powerful to remind our listeners that this is also available for you. And it's part of why I'm so passionate about helping people find their own freedom from alcohol.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Me too. That's so beautiful. I love that. And your daughter told you that. Oh,
yes. Yeah. And part of it is, there's another little part of it around reflection. And I think it also is powerful to reflect how far we've come. I listened to this podcast that Oprah was speaking, and she said the way she gets to the top of the hill when she's hiking, she looks behind her to see how far she's come. And I think that's such a beautiful reminder as we, as midlife women, can look and see how far we've really come. Sometimes we forget in the day-to-day how powerful and strong, capable, and dynamic we really are.
Yes, I totally agree. And I love that you're saying that, because I think sometimes we don't have other people necessarily saying it, and we forget to say it to ourselves. So it's really nice, this community, to remind each other, how far what we've done is amazing. Giving up alcohol, that's huge in itself. But definitely I do love to reflect. And I think this 50th, I have been doing quite a lot of that, because I'm only coming up 21 months sober after a couple of stops and starts. But what we've learned is I don't desire alcohol, so I don't see myself wanting a drink again. I never say never. That's, my motto. But I definitely am in a place, like you said, where I can socialize, and it's liquid in a glass. It means nothing to me. And at my birthday events, people were drinking, just meant nothing. If anything, I will be grateful that I'm not going to wake up with regret, shame, hangover. That's on the spot reflecting, going, I'm gonna be happy with myself tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. You are somewhat still in kind of the early stages of being alcohol free. I don't know what anybody's timeline is. I just know that at 8 years, it feels like, when I talk to people, sometimes it's been a while, but I love that there's no time limit on when this change happens. And so I think it's a powerful reminder that the desire can go at any time. We don't have to have a certain number of days under our belt. We don't have to achieve a certain status of time or circumstances. Some people talk about, well, it's really important to go through a whole year. So you've had your first birthday, your first Christmas. And I think that all of that practice and all of those experiences are valuable, but I don't think that it means that we can't experience this freedom earlier. And I've met many people who, in fact, have experienced freedom very early on, and they're solid, and it feels amazing. And one of the ways that I like to think about it is this idea that as we build this big, bold, beautiful life, the desire to be trapped by a liquid in a glass, as you so eloquently said, Megan, it just becomes a non-issue. And so the smaller alcohol becomes, the bigger our life becomes, and the bigger our life becomes, and our future and our present, then the smaller alcohol is, and there really is no pull anymore. And that's where I think we really find that the glass fulfilled is a real thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I know we mentioned the name of your business. Tell us the name of your podcast.
My podcast is called Not Drinking Today.
Okay. And that's with Bella. Does she go by Bella?
Bella, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Megan Bella is our podcast names. Yeah. So we're on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast.
That's great. Well, we'll link everything in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time today, Megan. It's so fun to catch up.
Oh, Terry, it's been so good to chat to you, and you are an inspiration to me. You were my coach when I was learning, and so I owe a lot of where I am today to you. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Well, you're most welcome. All the best. Hey, I want to thank you for tuning in and listening to The Sober Edge. This is a place to have important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, 5 Healthy Reasons to Take a Break. And I would be grateful if you would take a moment to rate and review this podcast so together we can reach more people who are looking for their sober edge.